Welcome to Virtually a Book Club. Peggy Sue and I are going to discuss our latest trendy reads.
There could be some spoilers, but we will try to warn you. We'll say it's virtually a book club by extension of we're virtual having our book club because we live a little farther apart than the average book club, I would say.
It's true, yeah. So first for introductions, I'm Jessie Henninger. You might know me from around the web. I'm a writer. I write fantasy, paranormal, that kind of thing, and have developed a very close relationship with some other writers on the web, including Peggy Sue.
I'm Peggy Sue. I write middle grade to adult fantasy, sci-fi, lots of different genres, kind of all over the place. And yeah, same. I've been on the internet for a while, not doing a lot with my face on it mostly, but excited to have these conversations.
Yeah. And if you don't know, Peggy Sue works for Jessica Brody at Writing Mastery Academy. So if you are an interested writer and you haven't checked them out yet, you should. And my first book, Tea and Lycanthropy, is available. So just so we're doing our good plugs the way that we should be.
Standard internet information.
That's right. And I will say, Peggy Sue always pulls me out of my dramatic sad spirals. She's very good at that. I don't even know if they're sad spirals. They're more like spirals. Yes. So thank you. I appreciate that.
I'll say fully the same. It's an emotional time writing, being a writer. It can be very isolating because a lot of the work you have to do by yourself.
Yeah.
So having a great writer friend that you can go to and lean on and spitball ideas with, even if you shoot down 100 ideas in a row.
Yeah. Well,
it can still be helpful.
Sometimes it's just the talking out of the problem. You know what I mean? Or especially if you're a verbal processor, I feel like sometimes that's all you need, and is one of the reasons why these spaces are so special. But of course, because we're writers, we're also readers, and we love talking about books, and we thought it might be fun to bring some of that to the web landscape and see where that goes. And today we're talking about dragons.
Ooh, very exciting. Lots of trendy dragon books right now. So we thought we would check out the dragon trend for our first book club talk.
That's right. So we have got dragons. You're connecting with them mentally, like on a telepathic level. You're bonding to them when they're born sometimes.
There's definitely a looming world catastrophe that only you and your dragons can save.
Mm-hmm. Right? When the dragons do it, the humans do it. It's a very popular trope, I feel like.
There's got to be a titular, very special girl who's not like other girls, and a handsome hunk who's going to show her the ropes on how to get everything done.
Yeah, he's going to teach her some things. This is so good, you guys. So good. And then you have the threads that fall to earth that destroy everything in their wake, and the holds that don't want to pay their dragon tributes, and the young woman bent on destroying the holder facts who, murdered her whole family, and then the riding through time on dragons. It's all very, very tropey, very exciting.
Jess, what book are you talking about?
Dragonflight by Anne McCaffrey, the classic 1967 dragon book. What were you reading?
I thought we were talking about the Fourth Wing series.
Oh, yeah. That does make a lot more sense. I feel like that does make a lot more sense.
And the dragon trend just kind of came out of nowhere, sold 2 million copies. Book.
Yeah, good job, Rebecca. You did it. Yeah. Yes, but of course, Rebecca Yarros, is that? Yeah, she is not our first dragon writer, and Game of Thrones is not even our first dragon writer. Our love for dragons goes back a long, long way. And I happened to be reading Anne McCaffrey, and Peggy Sue was reading Fourth Wing, and so we were having a lot of fun discussing the similarities between these books because they are separated by decades, a long time. And not surprisingly, I guess, a lot of our wonderful, fun dragon tropes do seem to at least have some of their origin with Anne McCaffrey. So we thought it would be kind of fun to talk about the differences and the similarities. And I have to say, I was the biggest Anne McCaffrey fan in my middle school, upper middle school years. I just destroyed her books, read everything I could find, and do feel very she's someone who opened up the fantasy genre to me, and even maybe my love of writing. So So there was that, but I had not read them in a very long time.
I love that. I think that's really fun. And I do, I'm reminded of like, I used to have a t-shirt that said "Know Your Roots" and it had like an Atari controller on it.
Yes.
Because it's like, there are the roots of video games. There are the roots of certain writing genres. And, you know, maybe Anne McCaffrey's not the first person to ever write about a dragon.
Right,
sure.
sure.
But yeah, there's a lot of like history in where tropes come from. And I think that's really fun.
Yeah.
And interesting. I'll also say, if we didn't make it clear, I have not read Anne McCaffrey, and Jessie has not read Fourth Wing, so we're just going to be winging this.
That's right. That's why this
Dragon pun intended.
This is virtually a book club, so there you go. It works on many different levels.
Literally a book club.
And if you're worried about getting spoilers for Dragonflight, I feel like you've had 50 years to get caught up. But also, we will be talking about Fourth Wing bouncing around all. So if you don't like spoilers, you haven't read it, you know, you might want to come back.
You know, cushion things as much as we can. If you're an absolutely no spoilers, want to go in dark person, you might not watch.
Yeah, I would say right, until you've read it or whatever. But also, I would be like, unless you have a ton of time on your hands, this does not have to be on your list. It was a very different experience reading it now than it was reading it when I was, 14 or whatever.
I was actually going to ask because this is weird, but in my library downstairs, which as you know has way too many books in it, this is one of the smaller bookshelves.
Yeah.
I found a copy of Dragonflight the other day, and it just is down there, and I thought, well, I could give it a shot.
And you could. So here's the thing. Like, first of all, okay, it's like, I feel like the print is so small, and like, you think that's not big, and then you start reading it, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is taking so long. And I did, like, when I went back to it, I knew, like, okay, this was written, like, our style of writing and our style of reading is different now. So I was fully expecting the story to be a little bit slower, and, for us to not get as much of, like, the internal thoughts and feelings of the characters. Like, I was expecting that. In that was true. It was definitely very slow. But that, I would say it does not hold up to our modern sensibilities in a way that really surprised me. So, yeah. Like, when I read this when I was 14, I was like, oh, Les is so cool, and and she's not like other girls, and like, wow, and a lot of like some of the things that I was very innocent about were going over my head. So I don't like that. I don't like the, like when one woman is singled out, and that is, I almost think that this book doesn't pass the Bechdel test, which it is written by a woman. The main character is a woman, which props to Anne, right? She was writing a fantasy series with a female main character. Like, that's huge for the 60s. Like, I don't want to discount that, but there's definitely a lot of fat shaming. Any of the characters that are like not Lessa and not the like one cook lady are like fat and gross and they smell and like they're not smart. So, and always weight is like attributed to that somehow. Like, I don't know why that would even need to be there or be important. So that I think was really like disconcerting, especially because like in my teen years, I definitely struggled with some eating things. So I didn't like that. And then, even though, so this character's supposed to be like the most important dragon rider, and they live in these holds, like there's dragon holds and they live there, and she is not in charge. The dude that rides the dragon that mated with her dragon is in charge. Why is he in charge? I don't like, I just really don't like it at this stage of my life. I'm like, they could be partners, they could be, and I do kind of suspect that she takes more of a leading role as the series goes along. But I did not care for that. And then there were definitely some, like, as long as we're info dumping on this book, so like when the dragons are mating, the people mate, right? And that was fine, except for nobody explains to this young woman what is going to happen to her when her dragon mates. So she does not know that's coming, even though everybody else there knows. Everyone knows. All the servants, everyone who's lived there, nobody explains that to her, which I find to be very icky, or maybe, I don't know, just done for like the drama of the book. Didn't care for that. And then, okay, So this is something that went over my head as a young girl, and I am like, am I reading this wrong? So this is like, I cannot get past this. So the main character, she's like been hiding for her whole life as like a gross scullery maid, and so now she's like, you know, can take a bath and not wear gross clothes and stuff. So the main character, like the dude, is looking for her. He was beginning to wonder. He checks the bathroom because she takes so many baths. He was beginning to wonder if this might be a subtle, less of variety insult to him personally. Falar sighed, that girl, would she never turn to him of her own accord? I'm like, so I'm reading that. I'm like, what? Like, what? And then it continues a page later. He had been a considerate and gentle bedmate ever since, like, their first dragon mating. But unless Rameth and Nemenmith, those are the dragons, were involved, he might as well call it rape. Yet he knew someday, somehow, he would coax her into responding wholeheartedly to his lovemaking. He had a certain pride in his skill, and he was in a position to persevere. So...
yeah, I don't like the sound of that.
I'm like, when I was young, I definitely thought that meant that they were not having sex. And I am reading this now as an adult person.
Because he was being considerate, he was probably not doing it.
They are having sex, and he is admitting that she's not into it. But, like, of course, they're mated, so I guess that's his right as a man? I can't. Like, every time I look at this book, I get mad. Like, I get really upset. Like, I have, like, a super visceral reaction to that.
Yeah, because that's a huge deal, and yeah.
And if a man had written this book, I'd be like, what an asshole. But a woman wrote this book. A woman wrote it. Like, what? Why?
I mean, women are not immune to the patriarchy, which is unfortunate.
Right. I mean, obviously, right? She's coming from her own, like, you know. And of course, by the end of the book, the characters are totally in love with each other.
Sure, which is great at the end of the book.
Yes! I'm like, I don't know. It sounds like Stockholm Syndrome to me.
Yeah, I will say Fourth Wing, being a modern romance, is, and I mean, it's not strictly a romance, it's a romantasy, right. And we all know that's a whole other thing that we can talk about in a minute if you want. But yeah, it has a much stronger grasp on feminism in general. She's not the only girl. She is a little bit like, not like other girls, but there are definitely other girls that are strong and capable and cool, right? Like she has a best friend girl who goes to dragon school with her, who also gets, like, there are girls who get to ride dragons. Her mom is like the head of the military, like the head of the military is a woman, and also her mom. So like a mom, which is cool. She's kind of a terrible person, and I don't like her, but she is there.
Like the mom in, is it Ember in the Ashes? It's like his mom is in charge of like the murder college. And she's terrible.
Like, great. Good for you getting a position of power,
I don't like it.
So I mean, there's definitely more women around that do things, and even, spoiler for the sequel, even in the sequel, they go to a new place with a new, like, power structure, and there are women in power involved there too. So it's not like exclusive, and it's not, no one's being like, oh, you're a girl, you can't even read. Like, it's fine. But that said, I know you mentioned a lot of the, like, weight issues, and I'll say in Fourth Wing, and part of it is in Fourth Wing, they're going to Dragon College, and it is extremely physically grueling. So they are working out all the time, and they have to do a lot of physical activity all the time, and everyone is stupid hot all the time. Every single person there,
of course, they are
jacked, very, like, you know, although women are very thin, like, it's obviously, there's not even, I can't even think of any side characters that come outside of the college in the first book, so I can't think of any that might have had a chance to get a little weight on them.
And this is like, okay, this is maybe this isn't that important as far as, like, this is a fictional world, whatever. But I'm like, okay, but in the real world, women who are really strong are usually, like, bigger women. Like,
bigger girls.
So many of us are in love with Ilona Mar right now because she is this strong woman who is still super feminine and is, you know, very vocal about the way that we view our bodies and the way that we view weight, right? Like, in our culture and in our world. And so I'm like, okay, I mean, that maybe it's too much to wish that on. Like, okay, but if everybody's going to super athletic dragon college, then they should be strong.
For big speaking points, she's an Olympian, and Olympians have lots of different body types depending on what they do. And I would love to see that specifically displayed. It's very interesting because the main character specifically has some health issues.
Right.
She has like a joint disease specifically that's kind of like unnamed because it's a different world or whatever.
Sure.
So she's very small, she's very thin, she has a lot of trouble building muscle, and honestly, like, her joints are messed up all the time, which can relate. And she has to take some different approaches to some of the physical tasks because of that, which is great. But I would love to see more of that. Like, I would love to see like more characters who had to kind of mix things up because of their body type, not just this one who has a physical disability.
Right. Like, I think of Mulan when she uses her like medals and she uses those to like get up
like
that pole, and it's like, yeah, girl, like, right. I mean, 100%. So that's always kind of, so like, I wish we could bring some of that into these books. Do you know what I mean? Just so young girls who were 14 and reading them can feel more empowered and feel differently than maybe we did, you know.
Yeah.
But.
And know, like, it's not healthy or normal to look like that all the time.
But at least there are other women in Fourth Wing, which I do really appreciate and love. Yeah.
They're definitely there. They're definitely, you know, they're not the kind of women that roll over and let the men be in charge. They're definitely like, she's not in charge, I'll say. I know your beef with your girl didn't get to be in charge. She's not in charge, but she's not in charge because it's her freshman year of college, basically, right? So first year she's walking in, no one would expect her to be in charge of things. And I will say she is put under like the authority of men multiple times, which is pretty unfortunate. And also, both of the men that she is kind of directly under, she does have a romance subplot with, which is also unfortunate.
Right. And you're like, and at what point do we cross a line here into like, this is no longer, you know what I mean? Like, I'm sure they're students too, but like, at what point are you
Yeah, they're older students, which is fine. And also there's kind of like the implied concept of like, oh, well, I put myself in that position so I could take care of you, which is also a little like,
okay,
she take care of herself.
Yeah, she's like, at murder dragon
school trying to go get a dragon, and like she can maybe do it.
Or that also like implies that like, I'm gonna be a good teacher for you, but it's because I like you. Like, instead of being like, I'm gonna be a good teacher because you're a freshman student, and this is
and
like,
everyone equally deserves to not get murdered.
Like, I'm a responsible person who's not a jerk. Like, you know. Okay.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not that. I'll say that there is also definitely the trope of when the dragons want to do it, the people want to do it.
They got that.
But I'll say the consent.
Just so you know, I don't hate that trope. I don't even hate that Lessa and Flar, whatever his name is, do it then. What I don't like is that it's then just assumed that
she'll keep doing it.
He gets to keep doing it. Yeah, like.
I'll say this is extremely funny to me, and I think because she hadn't read a lot of other dragon books, but my sister read Fourth Wing and has said to me multiple times at this point that she's waiting for a specific scene in the third book because she assumed when there was like the dragons want to do it, people want to do it things, the dragons are kind of in your head, that there will be a scene where the people do it while riding the dragons.
Ooh, on the dragons!
On dragon back in the air. And she's like, I think this is like the Chekhov's gun of this series. And I'm like, I do not see where you're getting that, but okay.
I mean, I do think that you probably will get to a point where you have a scene where like everyone, you know, the dragons are mating and the people are mating. Probably.
Sure.
Well, on a flying dragon? Wow.
Oh, that seems so dangerous.
It seems so dangerous because...
Especially because, and this is a huge spoiler, so like fingers in your ears if you don't want to hear a spoiler for Fourth Wing, she has a lot of trouble being on the back of a dragon. Like she can't stay on because of her joint condition. Oh,
yeah, that does not sound like a good idea.
So that's not a safe situation for her.
Not at all. I feel like that doesn't seem smart. And so I have not read Fourth Wing, but obviously like tons of my friends have read it, right? And and one friend specifically who it bothered her so much that like this girl has this joint disease. That's not what bothered her. And then they have this like insane sex where they're breaking the furniture. She was like, no, like either you have this joint disease or you don't. Like you can't have both things. Like it really, like honestly, that one thing I think ruined the whole series for her. She's
like, I'm never reading it again.
Yeah, and we read a lot of fantasy in our like group, so it's not like, you know, that was.
I'll say I also have a joint disease, and again, hers is unnamed because it is the fantasy world.
Right.
And they don't have like a fantasy version of what I assume is Ehlers-Danlos syndrome.
Yeah. They could call it the old Ehlers syndrome and just spell it.
Who knows? But yeah, there is a little inconsistency around that for me. Because for the people that I know who do have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome were fairly athletic in high school. Moving up until their diagnosis, could do a lot of things and really didn't realize that they had this problem until like a doctor told them like, hey, you got to stop doing high impact sports because you're ruining all your joints.
Right.
Which is a huge bummer.
Before that, they were like, I can turn my arm all the way around and throw really good or whatever. You know, like it actually.
Like tons of cheerleaders and martial artists who are like, wow, I'm so flexible. This is working out so well. And it's like, yeah, you're sort of subluxating your joints all the time and it's very bad for them. But because they were athletes at the time, they were training a lot. Their muscles were taking care of a lot of that for them, which prevented some of the pain. And there was pain sometimes. But in this book, she's had this condition her whole life, and it has been a struggle her whole life. So I have to assume it is at a greater degree of intensity than some of the athletes that I knew, including me.
Right, who didn't even know they had it, right.
Because we didn't know that we had it until we were adults. But that also makes me think, like, if it's so much more intense, like, it should be more all the time and not kind of like because my sister had an issue with this too, and she doesn't have the same joint conditions that I do, but she was like, it felt sometimes like she's not strong enough to hold her own body weight onto a dragon, and then other times like she was strong enough to hold someone else's body weight on the dragon, and that didn't make sense to me. There are a couple of explanations for it. Like in one part, her mom has set her up with like a personal trainer basically for the year before she goes to dragon school, which again, I think should probably start her off a little better than she is. She's been training with a personal trainer for a full year. There's a lot of like, she has to train and lift weights with the other dragon students, and one of those pesky authoritarian men assigns a person to make her work out extra all the time, so that she can stay on her dragon at the end. Spoilers. And then biggest spoiler, so fingers in your ears, it does not matter. It doesn't matter. The whole time she's like, I'm training so that I can stay on this dragon, and that's the most important thing. And everybody keeps telling her, she's like, well, the dragon holds me on. I don't have to hold me on. The dragon does it. And they're like, but he can't do that for you. He can't do that for you. It's going to be a problem. You have to learn to do it for yourself. And in the entire first book, it is not an issue at all. The dragon does it every single time.
The dragon's like, nah, girl, I got you. It's fine.
Like, it's cool. It's cool. I'm like the oldest dragon here. I know what I'm doing. We're good.
You know what? Honestly, you could have come in here with 0 muscles and it would have been fine.
It would have been fine. And basically she did.
That's like...
She improves.
That was your MacGuffin.
But it is a little inconsistent on how that works. And I agree. I think furniture shattering sex would also probably be hip dislocating sex for her.
I mean,
and that's
does furniture shattering sex actually ever need to have... Like, is that like...
Does that sound romantic?
I mean, I get passion. Like, I get that, but like...
They break a lot of things. It's not like, oh no, we slipped and one thing broke. They tear up her whole dorm room.
Maybe the furniture is all like...
Splinters.
Like, not even IKEA furniture. It's like, like the kind of IKEA furniture you get from Walmart. Maybe all the furniture in the Murder Dragon School is made out of that, which makes 0 sense.
Considering the world building.
Considering what they're doing, but that's my best guess.
Back to insane furniture shattering sex. I will say in Fourth Wing there's a lot more consent happening, even when it is like a dragon's excited, make people excited situation. She goes to the dude that she's excited about, which is also just happens to be, what are the odds, linked to the dragon that her dragon's in love with. Like their dragons are in love, and so they have a lot of feelings. And he's like, it's just the dragons, we gotta chill. And she's like, but I think I want to hook up anyway. And he's like, this is a bad idea. And she really has to talk him into it. So there's definitely like, he's not pressuring her at all. Yeah. If anything, she's pressuring him a little bit.
Yeah, right. You're like, I'm kind of uncomfortable on the other side now. Yeah.
Like, back off. She's like climbing him, and he's like, we should have some distance.
Your joints.
It's much more consensual. Even one thing I love about it is that there is kind of a a bait and switch. Again, this is a huge spoiler. A bait and switch about the love interest that she thinks she's going to be with this one guy, and then it's like, oh, never mind, and she ends up with the other guy. Neither of them really pressure her into anything, and both of them are kind of like, hey, let's take it slow and not, which I think is great.
Yeah, that is wonderful. And I will say, I do have to say, for Anne, not the bedroom stuff, because I'm just not okay with that. But as far as the, like, she's not like other girls, I did read an article, but like after I read this book, then I read an article about Anne McCaffrey and stuff. And this book specifically, because she had been writing before this book, but this is like, the one that really broke out. This book specifically, she was writing this character as like an answer. That's not the right word. Like, to be opposite of how all of the men at the time were writing female characters in fantasy and sci-fi. So in that way, Lessa isn't like other girls because she's not like other fantasy girls in the genre, at the time where, and I like, is it Ellison? Like, I don't enjoy him. I know he's huge. People love his stuff, but like his women are just props. Like they're literally just there to be rescued and for the guy to have sex with. And always it's like, well, of course she owes them her body. Of course she does. She's the only woman left in the world. Like, of course she has sex with all of them. Like, and that's
how that math works.
Yeah. Like, and so I do feel like I have to like give Anne McCaffrey props for doing what she did in her time. Do you know what I mean? Even though I don't like it.
I think that's fair. There's something to be said for being progressive of your time. Again, that's not something that'll necessarily hold up, but that we can like appreciate even if we're not going to spend a ton of time on it now.
Well, and that maybe it built, it built something that like it was something that we can build off
something
of.
Else.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll say it's funny that we keep talking about all the things that are the same because similarly, Rebecca Yarros had written lots of other books, and this was kind of her first dip into fantasy books specifically. So she had, I think, previously done something like 20 contemporary novels.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah. So for that, I can say, I think if you are coming into Fourth Wing looking for the romance hard half of the romantasy, it is definitely there. I think that a lot of the plot line is romance forward.
Yeah.
And that the fantasy, it's not like, I would never say that it's like, oh yeah, she wrote a romance and then threw fantasy on top of it. Sure. I don't think it's like that. It's very well thought out. The world building does exist. It's not like something that she just swapped over a plot from another thing. But yeah, it is definitely very romance forward, which is like one of the first romantasies I had read. I'm not historically a big romance reader. I am more of a big fantasy reader, so I was expecting a little more on the fantasy side of things and got a lot more on the romance side of things, and that was a little frustrating for me. For me, it was like, stop talking about how cute that dude is and tell me more about the dragons and magic and how the magic dragons work. Like, I want to know more about the magic part.
Right, yeah. Let's get to some dragon riding. Yes.
And it's there, right? Like, the A plot is definitely like the political, I don't know, machinations of what's going on in this country.
Sure.
Which is fun and interesting. I just wanted a little more of that, and I was kind of like, oh yeah, this guy is also here.
Yeah. So I'm like, it's funny because I feel sad for writers that don't think about me at all, so it doesn't matter. But like, I feel bad for them because I'm very like, I do want there to be a romance subplot, but I want there to be something happening. You know what I mean? But I will say, and we'll probably talk about this next month, new to the romance genre as well. You know what I mean? Like, I'm also coming new to this genre, so I don't have but I want something to happen, right? But if it's too intense, if the thing happening is too intense, then I'm like, it's too much. I can't read it. Like,
and there's also the concept of sometimes if the action is too intense, it's like, why are you guys taking a makeout break?
Don't stop! The building's getting crushed by an alien! Yeah, but like the Legends and Lattes, like, I mean, I read it like that, but it was like, I needed something else to happen. Not like stabbing, but just like, really, like, they didn't affect the plot at all in any way. They were just there, like, having it happen to them. And I needed something a little more than that. But, like, Ember in the Ashes, I couldn't even finish. It was too much for me. like I was too stressed out. You know what I mean? I'm like, I need something that's in the middle. I don't know what that is, but somebody, you guys can recommend some
watching
stuff.
this and you have suggestions for something that strikes the balance between Legends of Lattes and Emperor Ashes.
I do think like you can see how things are reactions to things, right? Like Game of Thrones was so huge, but it was so dark. And I think then now romancy is just huge. Like it's huge, and I think it's like I think it's a response. I think people liked that, and they liked the fantasy world, and they liked the idea of those. But like when you're living in a world that feels like a lot, you don't necessarily want to read about another world that's a lot, or that I mean, as how I am. It is why I like fantasy though, because it is like so far removed. You know what I mean? From like what we're even if there's like, you know, parallels and stuff. Like it's like, yeah, and there's a wizard. So that makes it more fun.
It's a lot different to be like the political ramifications of magic in this universe are different than like a David Baldacci, like your local senator is causing trouble for you. Because I'm like, well, maybe my local senator is causing trouble for me.
Oh,
and that's
no!
a lot.
What do I do? I can't afford eggs. Like, yeah. So, but I do see that, like, you know, you see that shift and you see that swing, and I just think that's interesting. I don't think that I have nothing to say about that except that it's interesting. And I am glad that there is more now. Like, I'm glad that there's more than just this. You know, like when I was a kid, like there really wasn't YA at all. And then when YA came, it was all contemporary. And then like, you know, finally, like I'm glad that there's more to choose from, young adult and adult, like now. Because then I think that the YA like informed like what we're seeing in adult now, because, you know, all those teenagers grew up. And so, like, I'm glad. You know what I mean? Like, I'm glad I had Anne McCaffrey back then, but I'm glad that there's more to choose from. And I don't want to talk too much about other books because who knows, we might talk about them. But, like, India Holton, for me, she does, like, walk that line where it's, like, it's obviously romancy and it's so silly, but, like, there's stuff happening. So it's, like, for me, you know, I don't think that would have existed 20 years ago. And I'm really glad it exists now. So, yeah. So I guess thanks, Anne? I don't know. I don't know what I'm trying to say.
It's like a double-edged sword, because I do love the idea that there's room for everyone to write their book and to like have the full spectrum of low stakes to high stakes, of, you know, contemporary to high fantasy, or, you know, hard sci-fi. I'm sure somebody out there is like, that is not what the spectrum of books is, but like, you know, all the different types of books with romance and books with no romance, you know, I love that they're all able to be out there. I'd say we're in probably in like a golden age of media where there's more available to us now than there ever has been before. And on the flip side, since we did talk about this kind of at the beginning, as writers, that's really difficult because now markets are more crowded than they've ever been before. It can be very hard to make your book known, for people to find your book or to find the books that you want. So I again would put a call out to anybody watching this, that if you think you have a book, like we've been talking, if you think you have a book that one of us would like, throw it in the comments. I'm open to reading it. Maybe we'll talk about it on another episode. Because I super love books. I'm into it. We'll check it out.
Oh, and if you want to keep up with us and you sign up for my newsletter, which the links for all that stuff are in my bio, you can get I'm like, where is it? You can get a free downloadable of this. So
mine is just out of reach over there.
Yeah, so it's a book log. You just you just write the names of the books you read on the spines as you read them, and it's just like a super fun, silly way. So I make one every year, and it is a free gift if you sign up for my newsletter. And that would be like a good way to maybe stay, like if you're interested in staying in touch with either one of us, that's a good way. But of course we're on Instagram and everything too. So
back on task, I know you talked about things feeling different in this fantasy than some others of the time. Do you have strong thoughts about the world building at large in Dragonflight?
I mean, obviously she does an incredible job, because I think there's like 50 some books in this world, and she ends up, like, her son ends up writing a bunch of books in this world. So like, I have read a lot of these books all when I was younger. I have not read them all, right? And so I know just from research that like when Anne McCaffrey's son starts writing books in this world, there are more female leaders. Like, because, you know, there's like all different levels of dragons. There's blue dragons and brown ones and bronze ones and gold ones. And the gold one is the best. And it's like the female one that has the eggs, right? And then there's other ones, but for some reason only men ride the other ones. I'm like, why? Why does it have to be men? Like, I don't get it. But later on, like, so, you know, a decade or more down into writing these books, they do have females riding, like the blue ones or the green ones, and there is like it's always a bronze that's in charge. But like apparently at some point this blue dragon lady does become in charge. So they do change. You know, there is some change. And the world is like, it is vast. So like I remember one of the books that really like I feel like stuck with me the most is like a very like one-off random book about this kid who is actually in this book as a newborn baby, but like he's in charge of this, you know, region, and he ends up getting a dragon and he shouldn't because he's not a dragon rider. And like that was really interesting. Like I remember being like very into his story. And there's like I think it's a trilogy, it could be 4 books that are all about like the musicians. Like the musicians in this world are really important. So the world building is, I mean, it's vast. If you want to read a series that you can just keep going, and then eventually they like find out how they came to be, and then it turns a little sci-fi and like, you know, so yeah, she did a good job. How about, I mean, does Fourth Wings world building does that feel strong, or does it feel a little bit like reliant on?
I definitely want more of it, but I'm not saying like she doesn't know it. It's just, again, like some of the focus is on a different thing. So I wanted more world building just for me because I'm a big dork. And I was very much like, tell me more about how the magic works. Tell me more about how we started working with dragons, because it seems like they would just eat us and they don't really need us.
Right. Why are the dragons in charge? You said that to me once. You're like, these dragons are totally intelligent. Why are the humans in charge and not the dragons?
Why are the humans in charge? Why do the dragons ever let the humans influence anything? It's insane. I would just not go. But there is a similar concept of like different, it's not just colors, but they all have different, like, I mean, I guess colors is part of it. There's not as much like, you know, the gold dragon is the perfect dragon, but there is a couple special dragon colors that are, there's only one of this one, or there's only this. And the colors do become more important even in the sequel, which is kind of fun.
Oh yeah.
So there's like a variety of things. There's not in this one any again, there are lots of women dragon riders around, so there's no rules about that. But I will say, this reminded me of, I also read His Majesty's Dragon last year.
Yes.
By Naomi Novik.
Yes.
I only read the first one, and I know there's a bunch of those if anybody's interested in picking it up. It's like a historical Fourth Wing. There are a lot of elements that I would say like feel politically similar to the Hunger Games.
Sure. I mean,
yeah, there's been some history in the past that is affecting things now, and you're still kind of figuring it out as you go, which is fun, and I'm into that.
Yeah.
I don't know how that's going to wrap up, because obviously I haven't read the third one yet, because as of the time of recording, I don't think it's out yet.
Yes, I believe that's correct.
I think it comes out later this month. But yeah, I I think I'm not 100%
sure.
fast.
I'm like, whoa, that's a fast turnaround there.
It's pretty quick, yeah. For big books, she's putting them out fairly quickly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the world building is good. I would like more of it, but there's not a lot of huge plot holes to me, other than the ones that are like very coincidental to me.
Yeah.
So the concept of like, our titular girl is very special, so she's going to have the most special dragon. And again, massive spoilers to anybody who doesn't want to hear them. She gets not one but two special dragons.
Oh, right, because she gets like a little cuddly pet dragon. See, they have those in this too. They're like
it's not, I wouldn't say cuddly, and it's not.
They're like kind of like birds.
Like, she gets the largest dragon and the smallest dragon that exists.
Yeah, in this world, there's like a breed of like, they're like, you know, like bird size, I guess, but like big bird. I don't know. Anyway, and you can like mind when they hatch. You can like accidentally like, or not on X, I guess,
with them or whatever.
Right. But they're not intelligent like the big dragons are. Like,
that's interesting. I'll say in His Majesty's Dragon, there's also a big like, whoever the dragon imprints on when it hatches is going to be like their person, and so that's how it is in these person, which is also kind of a spoiler, because the first they're like, it's not going to be him, which obviously it is, and And so that's a big part of it. I'll say in Fourth Wing, it's a very different structure where again, like you're at Dragon College, it's super deadly. Like the majority of Dragon College entrants die.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you go? Crazy murder obstacle courses that are going to kill a lot of people, or like crazy, there's like 3 different tasks that you have to do, and it's like, by the way, a lot of people die during this one. Every time. It's really funny because every time you're like, oh, we're past the crazy murder thing, and they're like, now there's a new crazy murder thing. And then at the end of all the crazy murder things, there's like a special walkthrough where you get to walk through and see all the dragons that are going to be available. Not everybody gets one because there's more people than dragons. Some people get murdered at the walkthrough, like if you look at a dragon wrong or you talk wrong because you're an idiot.
Well, that does happen in this book.
Roasted.
A little bit. They don't get roasted, but like the dragons are hatching and they're like hatchlings, so they don't know what they're doing and they're like, and they can't walk. And like if you don't get out of the way, they might step on you and crush you. But also like, get out of the way!
Intentional.
Yeah, this is not. This is like,
And then there's kind of like a Hunger Games free-for-all where you all go out en masse and try to find the dragon that is for you, and you have to like find that dragon and like, I don't know, do your special dragon handshake, and then that dragon picks you up and you fly to the registrar's office to register your new dragon.
As you do, because in any world there's going to be red tape and bureaucracy.
Yeah, and then of course it's a big deal because they're like, you can't have 2 dragons. No one can have 2 dragons. And I will say, because there's somebody in here who's going to be like, well, the dragons don't let the humans run all over them. And they don't. In this one, the dragons are like, she's getting 2 dragons. And the people are like, they can't do that. And the dragons are like, it's happening.
Figure it out.
Like, there's a big standoff and it's like, okay, it is happening because the dragon said so.
And she's just standing there like, I didn't do it on purpose, guys. I'm just super special.
And everyone getting more and more mad at her.
I'm just very special. I can't help it.
I just am the most special that ever special.
It's so hard when more than one boy likes you at the same time. You don't even know.
He also has that problem.
Oh, dear.
Are there any love triangles in Dragonflight, or is it
no?
Just
because like as soon as your dragon mates, then I guess you're together until the dragon's next mating cycle. So I guess that's awkward because if you are in love with each other and then some younger dragon comes along and catches you, I feel like I would just like want to go in and like fix some of this stuff. Like no. No. But if I'm remembering this right, I might not be. In later books, so like, because the original is like, I think a trilogy. I think there's 3, there could be 4. I do think that there are other dragons that mate, but they don't have eggs because of like the stuff they chew to breathe fire or whatever. So, and I do think that there are some same-sex relationships because of that. And when she was writing this,
and people to people.
Yeah, because you have to do it if your dragons do it. In this world, if the dragons do it, I guess.
Do you have to be the same gender as your dragon?
No, so because I believe that the blues or the greens are female, but they don't make good eggs. So they have them, they're just like fire-breathing dragons, so they can't produce eggs or something. But for some reason, only men still ride them. I don't know. But they still do it, I think.
You would think that would be less required if the eggs weren't happening.
Well, I'm thinking maybe, yeah, I don't know. But I will say, I do think that there are some same-sex relationships, which totally accepted. Like, this is like a totally normal part of their culture, which was, I mean, it's cool that they were doing, like, she was writing that then, if I'm remembering it correctly.
Is there a correlation between Dragon Age and Human Age? Is that, like, what's the ratio there?
Yeah, they only have the, like, participants come to, like, impress on the dragon. So the dragon, will hatch, and then it will, mind.
It's gotta grow up a little bit.
It's gonna mind meld with somebody at its hatching, and so they bring like a bunch of boys basically to these hatching ceremonies, but not all the boys will get a dragon, and some of them will accidentally get stepped on and die. And why are their parents upset about it? I don't know. And like,
gotta take your shot to get a dragon.
So if there's a golden egg, then they get girls, but not young girls. So the boys are young, but the girls are like old enough to have sex, I guess. I don't. Like, I mean, at least that's what happens, right? I will say that the dude that's in charge, when he becomes in charge, he does change. Like, he starts getting like older boys and boys that aren't as young because he feels like are more mature. So maybe there would be like, and like, so they do change some things, but yeah. So you're like young-ish, and the dragon is a baby, but the dragons grow up really fast. Like less than a year.
That sounds very His Majesty's Dragon similar. It's very like they bring a group of people around, a group of men around to be like, who is this dragon going to match with? And then that's your person.
Right.
Where obviously it's very different in Fourth Wing. And in Fourth Wing, dragons like will drastically outlive people. Dragons will live like 200-300 years. And so one of the big plot components is that the main character, Violet, her dragon is very old. Like not like incompetent old, but like old and strong, but also very much like this might be his last lifetime with a person. So
interesting.
She might be his last companion because of how old he is.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of like underlying things with that, and you don't have to date the person that has the mated dragon. So he's already like dragon married or whatever.
He's got a dragon. Culture. He's got a dragon.
And it just so happens that she happens to be in love with a guy that has that dragon. And they're gender flipped, which is funny. She has a boy dragon and he has a girl dragon. But they don't. He actually is very much at first like, look, here's the thing: our dragons are mated. They can never be apart. So anywhere we get stationed for the rest of our military careers,
we're gonna know each other. So we might as well be friends.
He's like, we should not date because if we break up, it's going to be awkward for the rest of our lives.
I was like, oh, you guys should get married because you're going to be together forever. Oh, I get what he's saying.
It's so funny because she's like, I mean, obviously we should hook up. They're hooking up. And he's like, you are not thinking big picture.
Yeah. Well, let's at least get to know each other first, right? Like,
there's a lot of standoff. It also, I know we've talked about this before as people, but not in the conversation. It is very much the like dark bad boy love interest situation.
Of course.
So he is giving off like very negative vibes of like, we shouldn't date, you're dumb.
Just
and also literally like the moment he is introduced, she sees him and is like, oh, he's so attractive, of course, like he's the hottest person that's ever lived, and describes the most terrifying person you've ever seen in your life. And then instantly she's like, what's that guy's name who I'm devastatingly in love with immediately? And they're like, oh, that's the name of that dude we warned you is going to kill you for sure. So she spends the first half of the book 100% positive that he is actively trying to murder her, but still cannot stop talking about how hot he is.
Oh my gosh. She's like, I mean, if you gotta get murdered, at least it's by a hottie.
That's exactly her vibe, which, again, as we have discussed, is not my personal vibe.
No, and I mean, of course she's young, but I do believe, like, you know, we become, like, more attracted to people when we get to know them or less attracted to people when we get to know them. So I do feel like if there was a super hot guy and then I really, truly thought he was trying to kill me, I would become not attracted to him because he's trying to kill me.
You would think. You would think that the way that she would describe him would reflect that she's terrified that she's going to get murdered.
Right.
Because she's genuinely confident he's going to try to murder her. And everything that she does plot-wise is like, because this guy is going to try to murder her. So, but she'll also spend time being like, oh, we're working out at the gym and he looks so hot with his shirt off. And it's like, maybe you should be thinking about how much those muscles could kill you.
Or like, what if he decides to kill you right now? Well, I guess there's rules about where they can kill each other. But like,
There are only some. There are not a ton. People get murdered all the time in Dragon College. It's wild.
That's, again, I don't feel like I'd send my kid there, even if they really wanted to ride a dragon. I feel like I'd be like,
part of why I hate the general mom. The general mom forces her to go to Dragon College. Her whole life, she was going to grow up and be a librarian, and that was her job. That's not the job in the book. It's called scribe, but it's the same job.
Right.
She was going to be a librarian, and she was going to work in the library, and that was going to be her whole deal, her whole life.
Great, perfect.
And a year before she turns 20 and gets to officially choose her career, her mom's like, you got to go to Dragon College. And she's like, where I will almost definitely get murdered to death. And her mom's like, for sure. And her sister comes by and her sister's like, hey, we can't send her to Dragon College. She's for sure gonna get murdered. And her mom's like, it is what it is.
And then you're like, but why? Just.
And their oldest brother, because it's like her and then the older sister who comes to yell for her, the oldest brother did get murdered in the military, not necessarily at college.
Right.
But like, because he's a dragon rider, got murdered. And they're all like, yeah, this is what it is.
You're like, sorry, your name came up in this draft that I just made specifically for our family. Like, what? No! That does give Ember in the Ashes vibe a little bit.
I'll say there's like eventually a thing, and you know, later on you figure out like, you get told why the mom felt like she had to do it, but it's also like, I feel like you could have made other choices. That's one where I'm like, I don't know that I'm buying that.
Right, like that. It's that
suspension.
like
the mom, even though she's supposed to have a redemption arc.
Like, it's like suspension of disbelief. Like, I'll do it for magic. There are some things I just can't do it for. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, okay, I will believe that that's the decision that the mom made, but I don't think it's the best decision she could have made. The whole time, basically, I'm like, it is insane that you've gone to Dragon College at all. It's insane that you're alive. You should not have done this. At every given opportunity that you had to quit, you probably should have done that. I mean, I'm glad she doesn't, right? Like,
we wouldn't have much of a book if she did.
Right. It's not much of a book if she didn't. But there are a lot of times she'll get mad at people for trying to help her get out of Dragon College. She's like, why would you do that? And he's like, I literally think you're gonna die tomorrow. Right. And she's like, I can't believe you. And I'm like, I feel like you gotta at least be like, I get it.
Right. Like you don't believe in me. And he's like, I don't want you to die.
That's really literally it. I just really don't want you to die tomorrow. And she's like, I feel like I'm going to be fine. You have to let me stand on my own 2 feet. And ultimately, obviously, she does stand on her own 2 feet. But he's not wrong for thinking that she wouldn't.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah. Now, I will say, in the Anne McCaffrey books, it's like in the past, people were really proud to have dragon riders, like children. And now, like, no. Like, they don't want their kids. Ooh. They're like, and the dragon riders just go and pick up the kids anyway. Which is a little, like...
Wow, that's... Yeah. I guess it's like, what are you going to do about it? Because they're coming on a dragon.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, but it does feel a little bit like... Dragon. But then, like, the thing that they need the dragons for hasn't happened in, like, I don't know, 500 years or 200 years. Like, a really long amount of time, so people don't believe that it will happen again. Like this, like natural phenomenon that happens that they need the dragons for to protect everybody. They're like, no, they're gone forever. And they're like, no, they're not. But like, people have stopped reading the ancient texts, blah, blah, blah. And it will start. Like it starts at the end of the book. So then people are obviously going to be into dragons again. Oh, okay. Because they're protecting you.
It's a really similar subplot in Fourth Wing where it's like there's kind of an ancient evil that's been opposite of dragons. And it's so long ago that a lot of people don't believe it was ever real. Like they think it's like a children's story.
Right, or part of some old religion or something.
But of course, because this is the book, like it's going to happen like next week.
Right.
It's not.
Right.
Right. Which is fun. Yeah, I'm open to that part coming back in.
Yeah.
I think again, there's a lot of things that I'm willing to suspend disbelief for. None of it is really like making this book impossible to read. Mm-hmm. And if you're the kind of person who super loves like somebody who should not physically prevail in a situation doing that, like again, I would say not quite Hunger Games adjacent on that one because the Hunger Games is very like. She's been physically prepared for this her whole life. She's capable,
and right?
Uniquely qualified.
If anyone is going to be able to do it from their district, it is going to be Katniss.
But a little more like if you've ever read Divergent. Mm-hmm. And Divergent is very much, she comes from the very like peaceful, calm, quiet, patient faction and goes into the like hardcore.
For some reason, again, I was like, when I read that book, I was like, you sure this is where you want to go? I mean, I guess there's not going to be a book if you don't, but she's like, I'm doing it. And then they're like, yeah, and if we cut you from this training program, you have to go be homeless. And she's like, doing it anyway.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah, and literally like everything that, in a similar way, literally it seems like everything she does should kill her. Like I was reading Divergent and I was like, she should not make it off the first train. She should immediately die. Are they going to switch POVs in the middle of this book? Because she should not survive this. And that's exactly how I felt during Fourth Wing with like all of these things. I was like, she should be dead. Yeah. But again, I read all of those Divergent books. I was on board. So it is kind of a Divergent with dragons situation.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. at all. Well, I mean, have we talked about everything there is to talk about?
There is one thing that we haven't mentioned, although we've danced around it a little bit, and it is specifically your love interest kissability scale.
Ooh, okay, so if I was 14 and you asked me what the kissability is for this guy, I would have been like 200% or whatever scale we're using because I didn't know anything. And now I'm like, dude, no. Okay, so if we're doing a scale of 10 kisses, 0 to 10, 10 is the best kissability, he gets like a 5 at best. Maybe less. I don't go in for this kind of nonsense.
I have a real hard time with this one, as you know. I struggle with like why people like each other in books sometimes. Maybe I'm a little too literal about it, but sometimes for me it's not, I can't just be like, you can't just look at each other and decide. Like,
I do.
like,
I do feel like, right, there should be, I do think like, at least in a real relationship, there's something more there, right? But of course, we are slightly older, so maybe we've learned a little bit.
And I mean, like, they grow and learn things about each other, and it gets better, and I'm okay with that. I will say, for me, a person who's trying to murder you is an automatic 0 stars.
Yeah, 1 kiss at most.
But at the point where she realizes he's not going to murder her anymore, I would maybe give him a 6. He's not for me. And I'll say, like, he's very described, like, extremely handsome, extremely muscular, extremely strong, like, all the things that you would think that a fantasy love interest should be.
Sure.
He has but also all the bad boy things. So he has, like, some tattoos and some scars that are cool, and you learn about later.
I like tattoos and scars.
I'm open to scars. I think that's cool. He has been through some things, and it's sad. He just never is for me. So I'll say, personally, if you are the kind of person who really likes Reese from ACOTAR, from A Court of Thorns and Roses.
I do like
He's
Reese.
got, like, big Shadow Daddy, sort of a little bit evil vibes.
I do like him.
So that could work for you. If you
so much more than Tamlin. Sorry.
Right, fair. If you are the kind of person that's big into Henry Cavill as the Witcher, where he looks a little evil.
So this is my thing. I love Henry Cavill, never seen The Witcher. I'm like, no, I want Henry Cavill as Sherlock Holmes in Enola Holmes. That's the Henry Cavill I want.
Yeah, if you're looking for a Sherlock Holmes.
I want Victorian era Henry Cavill.
Yeah, this is not your guy.
Oh, okay.
This is not that version of Henry Cavill. This is definitely like a evil parallel world Henry Cavill. I say Henry Cavill. He's I think designed to be a person of color, so that would be terrible casting. But Jason Momoa Jason Momoa could actually really pull it off.
Except for doesn't
he's
he
way
feel
too old?
I was gonna say he's too old. Yeah. Oh, I don't.
Like
I'm not
vibe.
hip with the young ones
of a dude maybe. Now actually I'm coming around on it because I do like Jason Momoa a lot. He seems cool, but he also this main character seems angry a lot. And while that's not a physical characteristic linked to kissability, for me as a person, if you seem angry a lot.
Right, kissability is not in the books. It is not just about how somebody looks. It's about like you know what I mean. Like I think at least for me, it's all the layers. So like I don't want to be with some angry people make me actually really anxious. So no, I don't want to be around somebody that's angry.
It's stressful. Portrayals is that he looks really angry in The Witcher. He looks really angry as Superman almost the whole time. He never smiles at anyone.
Yeah. Also, really he's got the slicked back hair in Superman, which. I'm like, okay, this is way off topic, but My Adventures with Superman, that Superman, super high kissability. He's animated.
Which one is that?
He's animated. It's an animated Superman on HBO, but it's so great. And that Superman, very high kissability.
I'll say I grew up with The Adventures of Lois and Clark with Dean Cain.
Yes.
And Terry Hatcher. Mm-hmm. And I used to think that Dean Cain was a super cute, super fun Superman. He's always very happy to see her, and they always have a lot of fun together, and things are good.
That is how much. Yeah, me too. Good job, Henry.
Good job, Henry. You've come up way too much in this conversation that is not at all about you. But yeah, so I would say, if you are into a bad boy, if you are into a
this question is not. What would somebody else rank kissability? It's what would Peggy Sue rank
kissability? I would not kiss this dude.
Okay, so he gets a 0 or a half. What's this guy's name?
He can have a 1. I mean, he does seem physically attractive, and I do like that he takes things very slow. He also specifically says at the beginning, like, I don't like weak girls, and then like she does have to grow as a person for him to start like accepting her.
Yeah.
So I kind of like that they kind of grow into each other.
Yeah. I'm
She
like,
could do
I
a
don't
better job
know.
of that.
I feel like Falar gets a 2 for me, but like maybe only because there's a 14-year-old still like inside me.
Sometimes it's one of those things where it's hard to let go of the nostalgia you had as a child.
Oh my gosh. 14-year-old Jessie was so innocent, or 13. I don't remember how old. She was so innocent. She did not get any of that stuff.
Yeah, that's really funny. Okay, with that, have we talked about all the things we were supposed to talk about?
I believe we have. So, like, again, put your book recommendations down below and check us out, sign up for our newsletters, that kind of thing, and hopefully we'll be back again.
Yeah, bonus to any books that are a little more diverse that you feel like are going to hold up in 10 to 20 years. Maybe a book with a girl who weighs more than 120 pounds in it could be cool.
I mean, that would be great.
Maybe a book with same-sex relationships or like a non-binary representation could be cool. If you know any of those, but that have dragons in them, let us know.
Yeah.
I'm interested. Yeah, we're open. Tell us what you think would be good. For me, maybe not a love interest that's going to actively try to kill you.
I mean, I do feel like that's best for long term.
Yeah, you can comment here, or you can probably check whatever social media we have linked under this post. And if there's other things that you think we should add to our discussion every time, or that we should do better or differently, let us know.
Yeah, but, you know, be nice about it.
Let us know in a fun way, like we're friends.
That's right. That's right. All right. Bye, everybody.